Good morning, everybody, and welcome to devotion time this week. It's great to be with you as the sun is shining, and hopefully in the next few days things will get a little warmer before probably it'll get cold until spring. So today, I want to look at a passage that is very often misunderstood, and those are, I think, some of the times most in interesting passages because they're misunderstood, and we have to take a lot of time to dig through them. So, as always, I've spoken too much introduction, and let's go right into it. Here we go, and we'll open this up. There we go. All right. Now, a couple of questions that we're going to address briefly, and ironically, when I say briefly, this will probably go on a little bit, so get comfortable. When is divorce allowable? And how about remarriage, right? What does the Bible say about divorce and remarriage? Well, of course, we want to look at what God's word says. Let's take a look. All right, Matthew, this is chapter 5. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. All right, now to help us understand this, remember Jesus is speaking to Pharisees, teachers of the law, so experts in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, it was practiced, right? Not supported or advocated by God, but it was practiced that if a man had a wife and he wanted simply to let her go, to divorce her, he could, but he had to give her a certificate of divorce, meaning that now she could marry someone else, right? So he's talking about this. He said, hey, it was also said that whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. All right. So he's not necessarily saying this is a good idea. He's just saying this is what went on. Okay, well enough. That's what happened. Now, what's important to get out of this is Jesus is condemning men who married with the intention of casting away. In other words, it was practiced in Jesus' day that even the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the scribes, the people who were supposed to be setting the best example, these were men who were marrying women without any intention of being faithful to them or keeping the marriage exclusive and solid until one of them died, right? These are men who weren't doing that. They were not making any intention to do that. They would marry a woman, get rid of her, and then marry another one. All right. So when he's going to say his next bit, it's very important. All right. And let me bring that up here. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the grounds of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery. All right. And we're going to explain because that seems real strange. How is it if I divorce my wife, I make her commit adultery? All right. Well, first of all, again, Jesus is condemning men who are doing this, casting them away, and basically um, just casting them off. Now, two things. First of all, by doing so, right, without any reason, they were doing two things. First of all, and most importantly, they were destroying what God intended to last forever. Secondly, they were putting a stigma on her that wasn't hers. So if I'm a Jewish leader, I'm a Pharisee or a teacher of the law, and I cast away my wife, I divorce her. Well, if she hasn't done anything, she really gets a bad situation because everybody's going to think, oh, why is this teacher of the law casting her away? She must have committed adultery. So everybody will think that she has committed adultery. That's where this comes in. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on real, actual sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery. Or expressed a different way, makes it appear as if she has committed adultery. Everybody will think that. All right? Does that make sense? You can't answer me, but I throw that out there anyway. Secondly, women were in a bad way because women had no means of supporting themselves. If a woman was divorced, if she was cast away, now her protection, her standing, her home, and her food, her clothing, all of that was put in jeopardy because she could not earn a living. She could not own anything. So if I'm a woman and my husband has cast me away, I'm going to look for the next opportunity. And many times what would happen is women would be tempted to get into relationships that were unhealthy. In other words, a woman would say, "Well, I need a man, and so I will be physically intimate with him before marriage," right? And so that's where this makes sense again. If I throw my wife away except for sexual immorality, I'm going to put her into a situation where she is tempted to commit adultery. Does that make sense? So, two things so far. First of all, that if I cast her off except for sexual immorality, I will put a stigma on her as if she had committed sexual immorality. And if I cast her off, I have put her in a financial situation where she is tempted to actually commit adultery. All right. So we still haven't really addressed the issue. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. All right. Same thing, except from the man's point of view. If I cast my wife off and she has not committed sexual immorality, society will think that she has. All right. So an innocent woman dismissed is stigmatized, as is the man who marries her. So for example, let's say that I'm married to a woman and I cast her off and she didn't do anything wrong, but I get rid of her. So everybody is going to think, because I'm an upstanding man, right? I would never do anything wrong. So if I divorce her, she must have committed sexual immorality. So everybody thinks she did, even though she didn't. Then another man comes along and marries her, and everybody thinks that he has now done this. In other words, the stigma is upon him too. So by casting this woman off, I put a stigma on her that she doesn't earn and on the man that marries her, because now he has married an adulteress. Got me? Okay. Now, to the issue of today, right? And it applies for today. When is divorce allowable? And again, forgive the spelling. When is divorce allowable? Now, first of all, as always, that is a complex question. Divorce is never allowable in the sense that God told us that it's forever, right? God's intention, his plan is that one man, one woman in marriage forever until one of them passes. One man, one woman in an exclusive, committed relationship of marriage until one of them passes, right? That is God's design. So in that sense, divorce is never allowable. But in our broken world, when is it allowable? For marital unfaithfulness, absolutely. The Lord says that if there's marital unfaithfulness, divorce is allowable. If there is abuse or abandonment, now let me put a little asterisk after these two. Actually, all of these three. If there is forgiveness, in other words, if it ceases, if the adultery stops, if the abuse stops, and the abandonment stops, right, there is the opportunity for reconciliation and continuing, right? Now, many times, of course, the unfaithfulness won't stop, and the abuse won't stop, and the abandonment won't stop. Let me also address number two, lest you think that I'm saying that women ought to submit themselves to abuse. Not at all. Many times, of course, the abuse will not stop, and many times the abuse is so severe that it makes reconciliation impossible. All right, I want to put that qualifier there. But many times, the unfaithfulness, the abuse, and the abandonment can end, and reconciliation can take place. So God is not saying you must divorce for 1, 2, and 3. All right, let me make that clear. Also, how about remarriage? If someone is divorced, there are 3 things as a pastor that I would require of them, all right, before they get remarried if there's divorced. One is, have you taken time to heal? Remember that C.S. Lewis once said that divorce is very much like tearing flesh in half, because what does God say? The two shall become one. The two shall become one flesh, right? So divorce is tearing apart something that was intended to stay together until one of them passed, right? So divorce is a tearing apart physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, not physically, but in the other areas that I mentioned. So before I get remarried, I need time to heal. I need to process that. I need to get that out of me. I can't be angry at my ex. I can't be still in love with my ex. So before I get married again, I need to be emotionally neutral. So if I get divorced, I need to process and have time to heal. I need to be emotionally neutral, no longer angry, no longer in love. Number two, I need to confess my contribution. When there is a divorce, usually one person is at greater fault than the other. All right, no doubt about it. It's very rare that two people are 50-50 in their contribution to divorce. But in a divorce, both have committed problems and have contributed to the problem. So before I get remarried, I need to look at my experience and say, what did I do to cause this divorce? What did I do to damage this marriage? And I need to look at that so I don't bring it into my next marriage. So if I was unforgiving, if I had a hard heart, if I was bitter in my marriage, I need to get rid of that. I need to stop doing that before I get married again. That makes sense? Also, as always, if I get remarried, if I am a Christian, I am to marry only a Christian, right? Being equally yoked. I am only allowed to marry a Christian. There are no exceptions. If I am a Christian, I must marry a Christian, not of the same denomination. More importantly, what you're looking for is someone who has the same level of devotion. Ask yourself, how often does this person go to church? How often do they pray and read their Bible? Do their actions in their life show that they are a devout Christian? That's being equally yoked. All right. I have spoken enough. This has turned into more of a study than a devotion, but I really wanted to spend some time and look at it. And so let me stop the share here. All right. Now, obviously, this is a complex question. It's also fraught with strong emotion. If you have questions about this, I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Um, there's more that we could certainly say. All right. But I want to specify also that this issue is very complex. It's not concrete. Well, it is concrete, but there's more that can be said. It's not simple, but it's complex. Let me say it that way. Okay. And as always, we recognize that even in the case of divorce, there is reconciliation, there's peace because of the forgiveness that we have in Jesus Christ. So even when we break our marriages and even when there is divorce, we have forgiveness because of what Jesus did for us. I pray this has been a blessing to you and more clarifying than confusing, and we'll connect with you next time.